Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check, mic check. All right, guys, we're about to begin the program, so if you can, please move up, take advantage of the front row seats. Also, for the to help serve your brothers and sisters who are coming later in and not disrupting. So if you guys can move up, that'd be greatly appreciated. Okay. But either way, what happened? Oh, I'm out of jokes. But either way, I just wanted to introduce Makar. He's a fellow brother and servant of mine, a person that I look up to. I grew up with him in Queens Church alongside Father Gregory. So his background, he has a master's in marriage and what therapy? Family therapy. So he is going to begin a 2-part series and take us on the adventure of love. So please, without further ado, give your undivided attention to our brother and fellow servant and expert, Makar Naguib.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I really don't know what an artist is expecting here especially with the part about the marriage and family therapy. So I wasn't really, unless you guys really, really, really want me to, but I wasn't planning to talk about romantic relationships in this series. Just want to say that. But however, if you guys really want that, you can ask questions. I'll answer any questions I possibly can, or we can try to throw in some additional time. But that's okay, actually, because a lot of the problems that we have in relationships, and this isn't my planned intro, I'm just responding to Menardo's here, but a lot of the problems we have in relationships actually come because of a misunderstanding of love, and also because of what we're going to, God willing, talk about next week is we don't love ourselves enough. We don't love ourselves enough. And it's kind of weird, because especially in the Egyptian culture, loving yourself seems like a very selfish thing, right? But as St. Anthony said, the person who knows himself knows God. The person who knows himself knows God, right? And you have to love yourself. And a big thing that we bring into relationships is we carry a debt of that we owe towards ourselves. We carry it into our relationships, and we burden the other person with having them fill this big gap in our own hearts, which is that we don't love ourselves, right? It all comes down to that. And you compare that in relationships. When you see someone who loves themselves, how they stand strong and in a healthy way in a relationship, you're like, man, this person can negotiate conflict so easily. This person can, create change, can influence, can provide care, can provide love. Like, when someone knows about love and when someone loves themselves, when they enter into a relationship, we're gonna be good. Like, I'm not really worried about that person, right? It's the person who, when I'm sitting there talking with them, and I'm like, they need a lot of work, they need a lot of internal work, right, before they could be really ready for a healthy relationship in the way God intended. None of that is the point, though, because of this, all because of Bernardus, my brother, talking about my marriage and family therapy, my little experience. But so we're going to do a mini series on love. Today we're going to talk about the name of the series is called The Foundation of Love. It starts from above and continues from within. Right? It starts from above and continues from within. And there is no way that we can talk about love. There's no way that, my brothers and sisters, that we can talk about love without talking about God. There's no way, right? So I'm not saying that in a solemn way, but I can't ignore God in this subject. You just can't, right? Because actually, God is very careful in when he says something about himself, right? He uses, there's very few things that God says he is, right? When he said, I am this, right? Or, he's very, very careful, right? So when God chooses a human word to say something about who he is, we have to know that that word is extremely special, right? Can anybody tell me, well, I know because of the streaming maybe I can't get a lot of participation, but if you have questions, say something. I'll try to avoid the little surveys and the questions to see if you guys know stuff. But one of the things that God said, he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? And just be careful, when he says I am this thing, it's not like he's saying oh, I have a preference for this, or I like this, or I'm similar to. When he says I am this, that's very important, right? He says I am. That means that thing is in his person. That means that thing cannot be separated from God, right? That means that thing is always present because God is always present, right? Because God always exists. Truth always exists. Life always exists, right? Life always exists, right? God said, and St. John says in 1 John 4 verse 8, he says, God is love. God is love. Not, he didn't say here, God loves. We know we know there's other verses God loves. It's something that God does, right? But God also is love, It's so weird that God didn't say, love is God, he's saying I am this thing, and anything else I'm going to, you're going to learn about that thing by referring to me, right? But God said, I am love. I want to say some statements here, and guys, listen, love is it can be a very abstract topic. It's not going to be abstract for more than probably like 10 minutes, okay? But because it's a little abstract, I need you to be really focused, okay? And I'm going to say some things, but just be with me, okay? Be with me, and if I see anybody dozing off, I don't really care. I'm just going to keep going. So God is love. Love and God cannot be separated. Love and God cannot be separated. Love moves in lockstep with God. Like love and God are like every step. There's no dissynchrony. They're always together. Everything that God does is loving, and everything that's loving has God in it, right? Just always together.
right? Everything, perfectly, perfectly, right? If you put anything in front of love, something good will happen instantaneously. If you put something in front of love, something good will happen instantaneously, right? Just put it in front of love. Love is and love does, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Love is and love does, because God is. Like, you know, God just said, I am. That's like, we don't even, no human being says that without putting something after that statement, right? But God says, I am this, I am that, I am this and that, but he also says, I am, right? Like, that's so, I don't want to use a lot of, social words, but I wanted to say savage, but I don't want to just, introduce all that in this right now. But love is and love does. By engaging in love, you are making a direct connection with God himself. By engaging in love, you are making a direct connection with God himself. You are learning about God just by engaging in love, because God is love. You're doing something that God is doing with you. So you see, love moves in lockstep with God, like God and love. But you see how my fingers, I'm just using 2 fingers to do this, but actually this is just a human way of showing you something, because God is love. It's not even like these 2 separate things, right? It's one thing. It's the one being God who is love, right? And that's the thing that's beautiful about love, that people are engaging with God even when they don't mean to. Like people who don't believe in God, right? Or people who talk about love as like the emotion, right? Actually, even in that small way, they are engaging with God. And that's why, when people say, see Christ wherever you go in every little thing, that's how you can do it, right? Because any loving thing has God in it, right? Even if the person doesn't mean to engage with God, even if the person hates God, even if the person doesn't believe in God, God is present when there is any love. Love is all around us. Just the fact that we exist and have all of the beautiful creation around us is a sign of love. The fact I am not worthy to be talking to you about love, because I'm not even worthy to know love. That's the thing about love. We're all here because of the love of God. And we just talk about love so freely, right? But it's because of love that we have love so freely, that we have it for free, right? We just have it, right? We just have love. As I was preparing this, I was just, I keep reading the notes and I'm typing stuff and whatever. And all of a sudden, all of the problems in my life seemed so small compared to the love of God that I have. I'm saying this from my perspective, but you can say the same statements I'm saying about yourself, right? We have the love of God, right? The one who is love, we have it. We have that. And what else in life, what is life compared to that, right? What is that, right? Love is perfect, but it can also coexist with a lack of love or hate or darkness. The thing about love, it's everywhere, but it doesn't overpower anyone. Love will never force itself on anyone. It will never force itself on anyone. All right. That was the abstract part. I'm about to get into a bit less abstract. Are you guys with me so far? All right. You guys are going to become philosophers here. All right, so 5 things that can happen when you love. I want to talk about 5 things that can happen when you love. The first thing is love will unite. Love will unite. Love brings people closer together. Love brings people closer together. It can see above differences, and it pierces through everything to get to the core of a person. And it loves the person at the core. And that's why it says in Romans, but God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So what does that say about love? It means that you can look at anybody or anything at its most at its worst place, at its core, if it's disgusting and dirty and messed up and sinful and harmful, and love, right? You can love. So I'm not saying this to condemn anyone for not being as loving as they should be. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm trying to tell you is that it's possible. And the calling and the challenge is, what are you going to do about that possibility, my brothers and sisters? You can love anyone in their worst place, even yourself. Even yourself. Even when you disappoint yourself. Even when people tell you that you're a failure. Even when you don't get what you want and you keep trying and trying and trying and you're not getting what you want. And then you just turn that message into, what's wrong with me when I can't get what I want? I'm working so hard. You can love yourself at the core. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And we must never forget that no matter who we are dealing with, love governs the interactions that we are in. Please, we are Christians, right? We're Christians. We are named after love. Like, we are followers of God who is love, right? Like, love is the foundation of us. We exist, we are called Christians because of love. We know Christianity because of love, right? So we must know that love governs every single thing that we do. Right? So remember that when you're upset with someone. Remember that when you're in a conflict. Remember that when, somebody curses you out. Right? Just remember that. That love governs every single thing that you do. Right? Love governs. Like, it tells you what you should be doing. Right? Love. So never forget that. Where was I? I'm here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, love unites, and love seeks to expand the community, to extend unity to everyone so that everyone is united in Christ, ultimately expanding the kingdom of heaven. Like, we, by love which unites, we are expanding the kingdom of heaven. We call people, we are part of that loving call where God is drawing people near to him, right? And he's coming near to them. And we're expanding the kingdom in this work of love. And this is why we invite people to church, and we should seek the person who is neglected. You see, when we invite people to church, you see, the biggest thing that you always have to ask yourself whenever you're doing something as a Christian is where is my heart? Where is my heart? Right? Is there love here? And sometimes, like, for example, imagine you're being invited to give a talk, and there's so many thoughts that could run through my mind, my friends, I want to hang out, what are they going to think of me, what is all this stuff, I hope I get invited another time, I hope my notes are good, I'm nervous, I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that, right? And then you ask yourself, well, what is in my heart? Is my heart in the place where it should be? Love, right? I'm going to go talk to someone who needs to change something that they're doing because it's really harmful either to me or to someone else. Or someone sends me a message. I just got a text message 2 days ago, really frustrated me. And I had to just sit there and decide, how am I going to respond to this message, right? It's so funny. I was on my way to church when I was thinking about how to respond, and I'm like, and this person, the person who wrote it to me, would probably like not care what I say, like not in a bad way. It wouldn't affect how much they love me, right? But I had to think, even if this person isn't going to love me any less, don't I have to be loving in what I do, right? So we have to, when we invite people to church, we have to do that out of love, not just as an activity. And it helps when you can look at every person with love. All right, so the first thing is love unites. Number 2, love sacrifices. Love sacrifices. Love is like a superhero. It can do amazing things without getting input from anything, right? It can do amazing things without any input from anything else. Like, it doesn't need anything to do amazing things. That's love, right? Love doesn't need anything from anyone. Love can give without looking for anything in return. Love can give and keep going and keep giving. It can just give and just keep going. Like, it's never like, all right, now my turn, like, how about me? You know, that's not what love does. Love just gives. It just keeps going, right? And we all know we can imagine a parent taking care of their child, right? A parent taking care of their child, like, you just watch these parents taking care of their kids, like, you know, in our generation, there's a lot of, like, parents who have, like, little kids, and, you know, little kids don't really do anything back for their parents, right? You just you give them some food, they eat some of it, they throw the rest of it in your face, you, like, whatever it is, right? Like, little kids they don't really give you something back, right? But you see these parents, and they're struggling, and they can't have a conversation with anyone, and they're tired, and they're waking up in the middle of the night, and they're spending money, and they're all concerned, right? But that's love. Like, love gives, and it just keeps going, right? It just keeps going. You also can see, like, imagine we all see on, you know, Facebook or whatever, like, you know, the most romantic thing where, like, the man who's like 95 years old is taking care of his wife who can't speak anymore, and she's in the hospital, and like, he visits her every day, and, like, he doesn't even get anything back from her, right? She's just kind of like, her body's alive, but her mind might not be there or whatever, right? Like, we got a room full of comedians. So, and so yeah, and like the old man is taking care of his life. He just keeps giving and giving, right? Just keeps giving and giving. Remember that, please. And we're going to talk about abuse in a moment, by the way. But please remember that, because, you know, I remember, a husband came up to me a while back and said, they're newly married, and started asking me about, like, you know, my wife is doing this and I'm doing that, and we're, like, struggling. And, you know, like, you know, I heard that the right thing to do is to, like, you know, I give 70% and she comes 30%, you know? And, you know, because if you give 100, they might, you know, take advantage and whatever, you know? And he's like, but I'm giving my 70%. She's not giving her 70% that she's supposed to be giving back to me, you know? And all the calculations are getting all messed up, and I'm, like, trying to take out my calculator and stuff. And so, but what I, like, love doesn't think like that, right? Love is not taking an account. Love does not account for anything, right? Like, imagine God took an account for us, an account on us. Imagine if Jesus was taking an account against us. He would always be, like, in the infinities, and I'd always be in the negatives, right? Like, love doesn't do that, right? And be careful, because this is a very individualistic society. How do you maintain individualism? You take accounts, right? My money, your money. I love when I talk to couples and we talk about finances, right? And there's all this stuff about, you know, like, you know, they're all, I had someone approach me and he said, my wife hasn't started working yet. You know, she has all these loans. And I've been working for like 7 years. And I have all this money, I have all this savings, I have this stuff, and I have that stuff. You know, is it really fair to like combine everything and all that stuff? And she's in the negatives, I'm like way in the positives and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, if this is what you're thinking about just the money, right? Like, you can't be thinking that way, right? Love doesn't do that, right? Love is not accounting anything. Love gives and keeps going, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Guys, listen to this verse. It's about giving and then giving and then giving. God so loved the world that he gave, that whoever believes in him should not perish, which is a giving, right? And have everlasting life. Like, it's just giving and giving and giving. Like, he just keeps going, right? You guys get the point already or not? I keep saying giving 1,000 times. Well, the third point is that love forgives, right? Well, but I don't think that that's unintended, but because actually forgiving is you're giving something. Number 3 is love forgives. Love is good for the one who loves. Love is good for the one who loves, okay? Even though you're giving and you keep giving, love is good for the one who loves. You receive something too. Love can overcome hate and not let hate eat away at someone's heart. I just want to give an important caveat here, because usually when we talk about this, like, some people are triggered by certain thoughts, which is normal, which is that love doesn't usually mean that we walk into abuse. I just want to say that. Like, the church is not asking you to walk into abuse in any way. We want you to be safe. And if I ever hear someone is dealing with abuse, we have to establish a safety plan right away, right? Like, it's not, there's no question about that. There's no such thing as, oh, love, so like go back and get hit. You know, it doesn't work that way. That's not how it works, right? But love means that you can see beyond abuse when it happens, right? I'm not saying that you ignore the abuse. I'm saying you, in addition to dealing with the abuse, you can see beyond the abuse when it does happen. Again, love doesn't say that you must endure it. Sometimes the greatest abuse, actually, and listen to this please, sometimes the greatest abuse is the resentment and bitterness that happens after abuse or injustice happens. Sometimes the greatest abuse is the resentment and bitterness that happens after the abuse or injustice happens. Like, because one thing, you know, could be, you know, whatever it is, may God protect us all, either if it's a verbal abuse, a sexual abuse, whatever it is. But that happens in a moment. But then you find the person is struggling, you know, with hating a certain group of people, right? Or unable to, like, just walking around with hate in their heart, or trying to get revenge for such a long amount of time. You know, you see this in big ways and in small ways, right? It happens at work, you know, someone gets offended, or somebody, like, you know, throws some shade on someone or whatever at work, and then, you know, the person is like forever against them, you know. And so this harm, that second harm of the resentment and bitterness, can cause much more harm than the abuse itself, right? Love has the capacity to move forward from the abuse. When you love yourself and love the world, you can forgive even when you can't reconcile. You can forgive even when you can't reconcile. Reconciliation is not required in all cases, right? It's not like required in all cases. But forgiveness is called for, you are called to forgive in all cases, okay? I just want to be clear. We could talk about that another time. You're always called to forgive no matter what. But you're not always called to reconcile if it's not safe. But when you forgive, you let go of that debt. You let go of that debt. You're no longer looking for that debt to be filled. You just release it, right? And that's why it was so bad. You guys know the story when there was a servant who owed, I think, the master like 10,000 denaries or something. I'm getting the numbers a little off, but it's just about perspective. He owed the master like 10,000 denaries or something, and he couldn't repay him, so the master forgave him, right? But then he went to one of his servant friends who owed him like 100, and he got so upset with him and put him in prison and said, you gotta go stay in prison until you work and pay this off. And then the master found out what happened and put that guy in prison, and he got so upset he brought like a curse on himself because of what he did, because he didn't release the debt, right? All right. Jesus showed the deep connection between love and forgiveness as applied to the woman who washed his feet with her tears. And I want you to see that love and forgiveness, like, they're so intimately connected, right? So intimately connected. Jesus said, therefore I say to you, her sins which are many are forgiven, for she loved much. Her sins are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, that same person who finds little forgiveness, it's the person who loves little, right? It's the person who loves little, right? So and also the most beautiful expression of love and forgiveness together is when Christ was on the cross, which is the greatest expression of love that we will ever know on earth. And while he was on the cross, one of the few things that he said was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So love and forgiveness are so closely connected. Please, I just don't want you to miss this point, which is that, guys, if you want to know God, who is love, and there is a lack of forgiveness in your heart, and you're not working on it, again, it's about working on it. If you're choosing to not work on it, then that is going to prevent you from growing closer to God and knowing Him more deeply. I want to also say that forgiveness is not something to be rushed. What counts is that you're working on it, right? Because for sometimes, you know, it's very sad to see and say that a lot of times in our community, you know, someone offends you and they just say, dude, just go just forgive them. Let it go. You know, forgive them. Hurry up. You know, to be a Christian, you're supposed to forgive, right? But the point here it's not binary. Like, you know, either you've forgiven or you haven't. Forgiveness can take a very, very, very long time, right? But what God is asking you to do is to engage in that process. Start that process. Start forgiving. And it takes a lot of work. Number 4. So what was the first one? We said love will unite. We said love sacrifices. The third one was love what? Forgives. And there's only 5. Number 4 is love. Love hurts. Love hurts. Love hurts. Man, love hurts. But it doesn't harm. It doesn't harm. Okay? Love hurts, but it doesn't harm. Okay? Harm, by the way, it's like when you're being damaged, when it's destructive, when it's not good for you. But love can hurt. Love can hurt. One important aspect of love is truth. One important aspect of love is truth. And you remember, Jesus said about himself, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He didn't just say, like, I spit truth. You know, he didn't say, I speak the truth, right? He said, I am truth, right? So God is love, and God is truth. And does everybody know the very famous chapter in the Bible that talks about love, right? There's like one chapter that everybody knows. This is the one. What is that chapter that talks about love? 1 Corinthians 13. Great. Yes. One of the very important verses that we kind of were like, yeah, those are like simple words. We're just going to keep going, you know. But it's very, very, very important. It says in verse 6, love does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Wow! Did you guys ever notice that? Love does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Do you see how closely connected truth and love are, right? When there is love, there is always truth. And the truth hurts, it doesn't harm, but the truth can set you free, right? The truth can set you free. Love can hurt. Sometimes, my brothers and sisters, we have to face the truth, and the truth hurts. The truth can be that, just some examples. I have to end a relationship, or I have to repent, or I have to make a significant change in my life, or I have to apologize. I hate that. What? Apologize? What? Say what? I have to apologize. Sometimes you know how hard it is to get people to say sorry? Oh my goodness. I remember someone I used to work with, and she would just like, you know, really go off on people, and people would get upset, and they'd call me and be like, Makar, this happened with this person on your team, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd be like, all right, well, this happened. And then I'd talk to this person, and I say, hey, like, this happened, blah, blah. She's like, yeah, you know, he upset me, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but, you know, like, that's probably true as well. But, like, it wasn't helpful that you did this. Like, I think it would really help the relationship because we need to work with this person for the next few months. Like, it might help if you call and apologize. No way not apologizing, right? It's so difficult. No way, you know, like the emotions come up, the defenses come up, but like you know, if I wasn't what I was, she would have hung up the phone in my face and said, get the out of here, you know? But she didn't, but she also didn't apologize. So maybe the truth is that I have to give someone a difficult message. Maybe the truth is that I have failed in one of my responsibilities or callings. Maybe I failed and one of my responsibilities or callings. You know, guys, like, I wasn't planning to say this, but we have so many responsibilities, right, as adults, right? We have responsibilities towards many people, towards our communities, towards ourselves, towards God. We have so many responsibilities. I really wish that we could face the truth and apologize to any of those people where we have fallen short, you know? Like, whether it's a parent or it's God or it's a significant other or myself or anyone, you know? We were supposed to be so much better, you know? And I like, again, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I love to listen, you know, every time, you know, now I'm married, you know, I'm married for like 3.5 years, almost 4 years. Every time I listen to this, I attend a wedding, I like want to pay attention to stuff, you know? And the part that always gets me is the commandment, you know, that says like, this is what you're supposed to do to your wife, you know? And I'm like, man, like, I like really, really fall short. Like, you know, all these things I'm supposed to be doing, and all the times that I'm so like selfish and like thinking about myself and being negligent about my responsibilities. All it takes is an extra few words, an extra 10 minutes. You know, all it takes is a few things. I remember I was at a men's conference, and, you know, someone was saying like, you know, there's so many things we're talking about. What should we do after all this, you know? I said, you know what you can do? You can go home and talk to your wife and say, you know, like, hey, I listened to all these really amazing things. We talked about all these things. And of course, like, you know, any woman who her husband's going on a men's conference, she wants to hear the whole, like, you know, the whole summary, all the details after he gets back. Like, what did you learn? What did they talk about? You know, and of course, when I was preparing to give the conference, and some women found out, all the wives are calling me, make sure to tell them this is that. Make sure to tell them that. So, but say to your wife, you know, like, hey, you know, I learned all these things and I realized I'm not really doing so many things. And where would you like me to start? Like, what is the thing that means the most to you, right? But I'm not saying that just to say all this stuff about how men can be better, because women can be better too. So, and also, like, we have a big issue in society now where, like, we're always bashing men and women too. Like, everybody's getting bashed these days. So we'll talk about that another time. But in any case, the point I'm trying to make is think about your responsibilities and apologize or make a change. Love is always good, but it doesn't always feel good. And I know this story, there's a man named Dr. James Dobson. He told a story about a boy and his father. The boy had an ear infection, and the boy had to get treated, right? So he took the boy, and the treatment was like in the office and in the clinic, and then they put him on a bed, you know, like a little bed, and the doctor has to go into the ear and do stuff, right? And the doctor said, hey, can you help me hold your son down, because this is going to be really painful, right? So the father is holding his son down, and the doctor goes in, and the son starts screaming, right? The son is screaming. And then the father said later that the thing that hurt him the most was that there was a mirror at the bed, and his son was looking at him through the mirror while he's holding his son down, screaming. You know, the son is screaming, right? But the father knows that, like, this is for you. This is going to hurt you, but it's not going to harm you, right? It's going to hurt you, but it's not going to harm you. And this is like how it is sometimes with the truth. We have to know when we need to deliver a good message that might hurt, even if that message is to ourselves. And that's why in Ephesians chapter 4 it says, speaking the truth in love. Speaking the truth in love. You may grow up in all things into him who is the head, Christ. All right, guys. So, I gave you 5 things that happens when there is love. I have 4 things on how can I grow in love. Are you guys still with me or no? You guys are with me? All right, I'm seeing some people like, just putting donuts in their faces. It's good. Yes, I'm so glad I asked if you guys are with me. So yeah, actually no, you know what? You got me. I said only 4. I did say 4. That's the truth. Thank you. That's so true. All right, I did say 4. So I said love unites, love sacrifices, love forgives, and love hurts but doesn't harm. Thank you for that. I appreciate the correction. Back to the donuts. No. All right. So, how can I grow in love? All right. The first thing to grow in love is oh, you know what it is? I have 5 of the other ones. All right. The first thing to do to grow in love is ask God to give you a loving heart. Ask God to give you a loving heart. Literally, ask God to give you a loving heart. You know, I love this prayer. I love this thing that, remember, there was a man, he needed Jesus to do a miracle for him. And Jesus said, well, I could do it if you believe. And then the man said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. You know? You guys know what I'm talking about? I see a little nod. If I get like 30% nods, I'm good, you know? So he said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. He's like saying, like out of faith, he's talking about his lack of faith. This was a prayer, right? When he says, when you ask God to do something, you know, it's a prayer, right? When you ask God to do, like we were just saying in the conclusion of the 11th hour, in the absolution of every hour, we say, cleanse our souls, sanctify our souls, cleanse our bodies, straighten our thoughts, purify our souls, heal our sins, forgive our sins, deliver us, surround us. Like, what is it? Verbs, just telling God to do stuff, right? But these are prayers, right? So ask God. You know, in Psalm 50, we say, create in me a clean heart. Like, create. You're a creator, right? So create a clean heart, right? Ask God to give you a loving heart. Ask him. He is love, by the way. If God is love and you want to grow in love, he has to be the source. He is the origin of love. You cannot be separate from God and truly love, because true love points to and leads to the kingdom. Ask God to remove from your heart, mind, and entire life anything that keeps you from him. If you honestly pray this prayer, you will find it a difficult prayer to pray. If you honestly pray this prayer, you will find it a difficult prayer to pray. Because if you're saying, God, please remove anything that's keeping me from you, and you really mean it, you know what that means. You know what that means. Ask God to reveal to you his love for you. And ask God to give you humility so that you can express love in all the ways that it can be expressed, even in the cases where you don't want to express love. Even in the cases. You need humility. We need humility to express love at all times. Number 2 is begin to practice generosity. Begin to practice generosity. Give and give again. Give time, money, a listening ear, and remember that you are loved and blessed. Remember that you are loved and blessed. Like, when you remember that you're loved and someone asks you for something, it's easy, right? When you remember how loved you are, and somebody asks you for something, or there's a need to go out of your comfort zone, you know what's behind you, you know, the love of God. Everything you have, even the current breath in your lungs, is a gift, and is something that you do not deserve. Even the breath right now is a gift that you don't deserve. Look at how I take that for granted. I just keep breathing. I don't even think about it, right? Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, there's people who are saying the Jesus prayer with every breath, right? And they're like always remembering God, right? I'm not trying to be over there. I'm just saying, like, you know, move a little closer, just a little bit, you know, just a little bit, maybe tomorrow. Love is expressed in giving, and sometimes you have to give the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes the thing you have to give is the benefit of the doubt, right? One time I was sitting with a couple, and I love this, you know, especially, I just love this stuff. Yeah, so, because you're watching it from the outside, and after you've seen it for so many times, you're like, all right, just don't do that thing, you know, it's like, it's not good for you. Well, you know, like, what is say, like, yeah, and, you know, she probably means that this and this and this and this and that, and this and this and this and this and that. And she's sitting right next to him, and I'm like, bro, like, what? I didn't say bro, but I said, like, why don't you just ask her what she meant? Like, why don't you just ask? Like, why don't you do that? You know, you could just ask. Like, what did you mean? Yeah, that will save so much trouble, you know? Because we're thinking all this stuff, and you know when you think this stuff, it's not just thoughts. Thoughts trigger emotions. So you're thinking, you're feeling, and all this stuff, ruminating, and then finally, you're supposed to work on conflict. Yeah, right, you're going to work on conflict. You're going to work on creating conflict, right? That's what you're going to end up doing, right? So sometimes you have to give the benefit of the doubt. If you don't know, give the benefit of the doubt. When somebody walks into church and you think because of your biases or my biases that they don't belong here, give them the benefit of the doubt, please. The people who are walking in could be the most amazing experience that an entire community has had, right? These brand new people who you don't think know anything compared to what you know, right? Remember that Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. It's more blessed to give than to receive. And when you give, you are receiving. All right, I'm almost done, guys. I know I'm almost done. I need like maybe 7 more minutes. You guys with me for 7 minutes? Can we do that? I know it's a long day, liturgy, work and stuff. All right. Number 3, become more deeply aware of God's unconditional love for you. I'm going to list some things. Just think about them. I'm not even saying go deeply into them, but just kind of cover them, like kind of just hop from one to the other. All the things he's done for and given you. All the times that you've offended him. Think of all his promises to you. Think of the time he's shown you love through others. Think of the blessings that you are currently experiencing. Think of the fact that you are not destroyed by the evils and troubles of this world and this life. Think of all those things. Think of God's unconditional love for you. This stuff is true for me, like, no matter what. No matter what. Like, if I want to become more loving, it's when I think of this stuff, it really motivates me. Meditate on God's love for you. Also, remember that he is actively and intimately involved in your life. I want to just tell you 2 verses, but there's so many. In Luke 12, verse 7, it says, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore. The very hairs of your head are numbered. Like, every single one. I know some of us were like, bro, I ain't got no hair. No, we're good. Even the ones on your arms are numbered. Every hair. But here it says of your head. So all the hairs of your head are numbered. Every detail of your life, he is in it. He's in there, in those details, right? He's active and intimate. He's all up in those details of your life. All up in there, right? Psalm 139, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought from afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. With all my ways. Everything I do, every step. For there is not a word on my tongue. But behold, O Lord, you know it all together. Can you imagine how intimately God is involved in your life? How actively involved he is in your life? When you meditate and you become more aware of his unconditional love and activity in your life, you will be able to love more. For the last 2, identify the high return opportunities to grow in love. And I want to say, like, there are some things you can do, you'll grow in love like a little bit, but I want to argue there's some high return opportunities. Ones where, like, if you pursue these ones, you're going to get a big dose of love in your heart that you're going to have for the future, okay? These are the things that challenge you so much that you can grow, so much so that you can grow tremendously by achieving them. There are some people that we need to show love to that we do not. There are some people that we need to show love to that we do not. Usually, it's those who are closest to us. It's those who are closest to us. For example, our parents. Like, just think about that. Some, we kind of usually it's like a mix. Sometimes some people are like so like tight with their parents, and some people are like, my parents, whatever. But our parents, siblings, authority figures, people in our community who would be in our social group but are marginalized. I don't mean people who are abusive, by the way, whom you'll be in danger, like if you go near them or interact with them, but I mean those whom you've taken for granted. We take a lot of people for granted, right? And we have to show those people love. Go express love to them. Do the hard work of forgiveness. It takes effort and time and pain. To forgive takes pain, right? Because sometimes to forgive, you have to really, like in a healthy way, recall the offense. And if you don't do that in a healthy way, it could really harm you. But if you do it in a healthy way, it'll hurt, but it won't harm you, right? But you will be released and free and more ready to love again and more deeply. So, identify the high return opportunities to grow in love. I think everyone here knows the high return opportunities for themselves. There are places where, it's hard to lean in, it's hard to move forward, but we know there's love needed there, there's a big gap, a big hole, and we need to enter that. And that's high return, because once you've done that, you can get to a place where Jesus and Saint Stephen were like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, right? Those are big hearts that say those things. Big hearts, right? Hearts that have forgiven in many other ways. The last thing, which is kind of like an intro to next week, God willing. In order, what's the question we're trying to answer? How can I grow in love? Make peace with yourself. Make peace with yourself. Begin to accept yourself as you are, and then start to love yourself. Like I kind of, in the last few years, I made a lot of, just saying a personal thing, but I made a lot of strides in accepting myself, But then it took me like another 1.5 to 2 years to start loving all the things that I've accepted. Like sometimes you accept like who you are, you accept and you're like, all right, that's kind of like a situation, I just have to accept it. It is what it is, right? But it takes a while, it takes more work to love who you are, right? To love who you are. We are plagued by perfectionism, by overly critical thinking, by unhealthy comparing with others. In other words, we are bombarded with messages of many ways not to love or even hate ourselves. Every day, these messages are coming at us. They're telling us, don't love yourself. Some messages are, hate yourself. We're always comparing. We're always so critical, right? We can't rest. We're having trouble sleeping. We just can't. Our minds are all over the place, right? It's like we're constantly active and vigilant. Like our minds are vigilantly criticizing ourselves, right? And what we did and how we performed and all this stuff. Like, what happened, right? Embrace your circumstances and the cards you were dealt. Become more confident in what you offer and what you can do with God's grace. And realize that the state of growing and going from glory to glory, like St. Paul says, is a state of love. Because love builds and edifies. Love builds. So, if you're in a state of growing, then you're in a state of love. As long as you're growing, you're good, right? But if you've completely just like thrown in the towel, you've given up, forget this, forget that part of my life, I'm not going to try to grow there anymore, whatever. And I actually do hate it. I'm also very sad. When people give up on growth because they think it's too late. Because they think it's too late. I hate that so much because the whole world is before them. All of life. God is offering them something amazing. And they paralyze all of that work by saying, it's too late. That's who I am. These are the cards I was dealt. It is never too late. God is a miracle worker. God is the one who saves a thief in the last moments of his life. Like what? You know? Like God is not like limited by how late it is. Right? He's outside of time. It's never too late for him, right? He's good. Like don't worry, he's gonna be all right. He has all the time he needs. He only needs like a split second, you know? He only needs a split second. But we're the ones who make it take years sometimes. We're the ones who make it take years. Because we can say, God, I'm ready. Do whatever you want. I love that statement in the New Testament and even in the Old Testament where people say, here I am. Here I am. Here I am, God. Do whatever you want. Like when St. Paul said to Jesus when he appeared to him. And many people, many of these statements where people say, here I am, what would you like us to do? Identify what is keeping you from getting even better and start the work. And to increase your chances of success, work with someone who can give you feedback about what you've identified and the work that you plan to do. Are there any questions or comments or concerns? Yes. Yeah, I mean, so the question is, can we, practical ways to combat feeling numb to God's love? You know what's really beautiful about love is, and this by the way, this happens in couples all the time. Like it's all the time. You know, you kind of just keep, the routine builds or life kind of passes and time passes, and then you just don't feel it anymore. The spark is gone. It's just gone, you know? But sometimes, I'll give you a little technique, if I tell you this, maybe a therapist can't do this on you anymore. But sometimes a couple comes in and, you know, they're kind of like struggling, they don't feel close anymore. And the therapist asks them to sit differently in the room, right? Just to tell them, sometimes the therapist can say like, hold hands during the session. Or just hold hands, you know? They probably haven't slept together for years, you know? They're fighting and all this stuff. But he says just hold hands. The therapist might ask, can you tell me about when you guys met? Connect that to remember your first love, you know? So, like, the beautiful thing about love is love, like, grows as you activate it. It grows. You just start activating it. And you'll find, like, wow, it's coming back. And these couples are like, they're like, we never thought we would get this back, you know? And you're just watching something so beautiful, you know? Like and it happens so quickly. Like, you know, the prodigal son just starting, and bam, the father comes out, you know, gives him everything. Like not even just comes out to meet him, like comes out and then gifts him with all these things, restores him to his estate, has everybody celebrating, right? So what you can do if you feel numb to God's love is start activating. Let's just start. And again, like you give God the 2 mites, he sees more than anything else. You give God, you know, 2 animals in an ark, he restores, like, you know, all land animals in creation. Right? You give him 5 loaves and 2 fish, he feeds thousands. Right? You give him a step towards the Father and the Father comes out. Right? Like you just start. Just start. And keep going and just, you know, a little, does that answer your question? Yeah. Like just pray. Just pray. You know, so I feel it. Like I feel it. I get so busy and I'm like, you know what, like I'm not as diligent as I should be in my relationship with God. But sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go to church. Like when I go to church, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna try to spend like 3 minutes and focus and pray. And I'm gonna say, God, you know, like we're not even gonna talk about how far I am from you right now. But like I really miss you, you know, and I miss what we had. You know, that's all, God. And I really want us to be in a closer relationship. Just that, you're opening up, softening your heart. God is always responding, you know. By the way, if you're here praying, God is like right next to you. Like the second, he jumps right in. Like he's not even waiting. Like just do something and he's in. Like that's what God wants. That's like he's longing for that. He desires the salvation of all men. You know, like he can't wait for that little prayer. You know, when you come to yourself, like the prodigals, like he can't wait for that. Like, and he'll send his angel. He said, the angels rejoice in heaven over one sinner who repents. Like, that one sinner is causing a party up in heaven. That one guy. But the 99 aren't doing anything. But that one guy who comes back to God, there's a party in heaven for that one sinner. You know? So, yes. Okay, we have Dr. Severe. Yeah, we have a mic there. Yeah.
One of the things that I think can help answering Chris' question is always think of how great he is. When يعني even in a relationship, and Mahar just said it. Remember why you decided to go in a relationship with this person. How beautiful this person is or was in your eyes. So thinking of how great God is, I think can help growing my relationship with him and my love back to him. The other thing is remember how great he did in your life and what did he do in your life. We tend to forget everything. Remember how great he is, I think, is two key words here.
Yeah, in the book of Revelation, it talks about angel, in chapter 5 and in chapter 8, he says that an angel carries up the incense and the prayers of the saints. And then in chapter 8 it says, carries up the incense, which are the prayers of the saints. The point I'm trying to make is that there's no prayer, no word, no tear, no thought that God discounts. Like, you are so loved by him, so much so that he put his seal on you. He has his image in you. Like, you are already a part of him. It's actually the world that makes us forget that. You know? We are so much closer to God than we feel. So much closer to him. Like, it's a really big topic. Mina, and then Amir, then Ramon. Yeah.
So, as a therapist and a Christian, what is your opinion about the TV show Bachelor?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are watching it and they are really like it.
Wait, now I gotta say my opinion about those people too? Yeah. Well, just to clarify, so I don't get myself in trouble from a licensing perspective, I finished my degree, but I didn't get my license just yet. It takes a few years to get a license, so I technically cannot call myself a full therapist. No, I mean, let me not say anything about the people, but about the show. The show is, you know, guys, like, the problem is, one of the big problems in relationships these days is all the things you have to unlearn. You have to unlearn so much. And, like, you're sitting there, you're coming into a relationship with, like, 500,000 expectations, you know, in the littlest things, in the biggest things. I just had a whole conversation with someone about what does it mean for the man to pursue. Like, you know, and because of all those expectations, this relationship was stagnating when it didn't need to, you know? Please, guys, you know, if you want to watch stuff for entertainment purposes and it's healthy and clean, you know, I'm not going to discourage you from doing that. But just be very careful, because when you don't know something, you will know something. Somebody will teach you something, right? If you don't know something, you're going to get taught, right? And whoever's going to teach you may not have your best interests in mind. So we don't know, for example, we don't know a lot about sex. Where do we learn sex? Movies, pornography, billboards. And then you find couples getting married and they're struggling, right? Why? Because they're all, the mind is all mushed up, and now and the work of undoing that is much harder than the work of teaching the right thing from scratch, right? Because now the thoughts have emotions associated with them, and we have to now peel the thoughts apart, peel the misunderstandings, right? So we're going to watch The Bachelor, we're going to get excited because the guy said this or the girl said that and she felt this or she looked that way and blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to wonder, why don't I have that in my relationship, or why doesn't that guy or why doesn't that girl make me feel that way? And then, oh, the relationship isn't going well. And, you know, you would have been more excited, but now you're not. You would have been more attracted, but now you're not. You would have said something healthy, now you're saying something unhealthy. Like, just be careful, guys. Whatever you let in sticks. You're a human being. Everything you do carries is important, right? Everything you do, good or bad, is important, right? So because you're made in the image of God, so you're important, and everything you do is important. So whatever you let in is going to affect you. Whatever video you watch, whatever thing you scroll through, whatever you spend your time doing, it leaves an impression because you're a human being. You're deep, you're dynamic, you're important, you're a big deal, right? Amir?
I don't know how to follow the question, but like you were talking about love and forgiveness, and like loving the people around you, just like how God loves you. But where do you distinguish the line between being healthy and loving yourself and having a good sense of self-worth, and like not being kind of abused, like you said, but still also like loving this person or loving your friend, even though you feel like this is getting to the point where you're not seeing any sort of fruit coming out of it, that this person is still.
Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is distance. And you see, like, let me just say an important connection. We said there was a connection between love and truth. Love and truth, right? Like God said, love rejoices in the truth, right? Something that's true is that you have to have healthy boundaries, right? One of the most important boundaries, there's many boundaries, is distance. And that's it. That's truth. That's truth. If the truth is that something is not good for you, then the truth is that the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for that person is distance. And it's very hard, right? Because, like, let's play this out. When you don't keep the distance or create the distance that you should have, you're deceiving yourself. And you're falling into a lie. And you keep wondering, why do I keep being deceived? I thought it was this, but it's actually that, because it's not the truth. So it's just, and we have to, this is the truth. Like, we have to, like, sometimes, and now the question is, like, there's a lot more to this. Like, I'm just trying to give a very general answer. But the question is now, part of the truth that maybe, like, you or the person you're saying needs to, like, change something to make a relationship work. So to make it where distance is not what's needed, but something else is better. Because sometimes in relationships, the other person or the relationship is showing us something inside of ourselves that we need to change. Like, when you enter into a relationship, any relationship, but especially like a romantic relationship, you end up being confronted with yourself so much, and you're like, wait, I didn't even know I had an opinion about this thing. And actually, I don't even like this. Or I didn't know I had an opinion about this and I love it so much, So there's a lot of nuances and it goes case by case. But don't rule that out. And really, if you are going into a relationship with God, you are willing for God to end the relationship. Right? If say, God, I'm going to go into this relationship. If you want me, God, I'm going into it because you're with me. And I'm going to keep going. Every step, I'm doing it with you. And if this relationship continues into complete commitment in marriage, then, God, I'm going to need you to get me to the end of my life in this marriage. I'm going to need you the whole way. So, God, if you don't want me to continue, then I won't continue. Is that freedom there for God to do that? Does God have the freedom to show you the truth in love? That's the question, right? And it's a hard prayer to pray. I remember when I was like I would pray that at the beginning when I was with my wife, when she was like my girlfriend at the time. But the more we fell in love, or we're like in love, the harder it is to pray that prayer. And I'm like, man, God, if this is from you, please end the relationship. But like, not really though, like a little bit. But it is for you though, right? Because I'm praying, because I love you. But when God is first, all the other, like, love works in all directions, in all ways, when God is the focus of your love and the foundation of your love. Ramon?
Is it not the time to sit and kind of invent some ideas and tools just to make these sweet words about love to be applicable in our Egyptian community? Since actually, just to overcome all this cultural damage, you know, we all came from very competitive culture, which affects the love directly. You come to the Coptic church, you hear the sweetest words ever about love. However, like if you go to Egypt, no matter if you go to Egypt or you stay here, you know, hardly to see someone really love like one another, like especially even within the families itself. Even, hold on, just one second. even when it comes to even like here, let's say here, you know, like you always like some families they compare to the neighbors. Oh, he didn't put the garbage can the right way.
Yeah.
Maybe the mom tells her girl, oh, look at your like your friend. She did very well at such and such. Oh, she got engaged very soon. She's very, very competitive, and it's not really like, you know, like loving and we hear the sweetest thing ever, but the damage that caused by the culture effect, it's a way greater than like just words, I guess.
Yeah, you know, I want to say two things. I mean, let me say the more direct point and then the other point, which is that I don't have like, you know, one tool that's going to like change the world except for Christianity. Like, I don't have something else to say. Like, God is the answer to that question, and it's not about practical tools, because we can, if we separate this discussion and just make it a social issue, and we separate it from God himself, then it's not going to work. And I know it's not what we want to hear. We want a quick answer. We want, like, you know, give me the tool, give me the 5-step method, and it's gonna change the world. But this is what leads me to my second point, which is, if you grow in love, you see love more clearly around you. And you become that. Like, believe me, the world is changed by individuals who love more. The world is changed. Think about all these people who changed the world in a positive way. Just think about them. One person. Even just Warren Buffett was just telling you, the big investor was just saying, you know, to measure success in your life, you want to be loved by the people who you want to love you. You know, it's all about love. So all I'm trying to say is, we can spend so many years of our lives, and I'm not saying this is you, Ramon, but you can spend so many years of our lives being bitter about how the world is. The world stinks, guys, but the world is temporary. Life is not about the world. But what we want to do is we want to love more. Like, let everything we say affect your heart. If one person's heart is affected, including mine, by this discussion, then we're good. Like, that's going to make a big difference, right? Even, I'll tell you something, even Jesus didn't do what you're describing, right? And he loved the world, that he gave his only begotten son, right? Like, he loved the whole world, but he didn't, like, bam, one tool, one thing, right? Except the cross, right? And so my short answer, but it doesn't feel direct, but it is direct, is let it touch your heart first. And you will find that there is so much more love around you than you even believe. Yeah. Yes.
And we tend to correlate feelings with love. And are we deceiving ourselves? And if we are deceiving ourselves, how do we avoid being deceived?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for that question, because feelings are good. Like, I just want to say, I don't want to say every feeling is good, but the capacity to emote is from God, right? I want to say that is very important. Like, because sometimes we, especially as, you know, we have this very like patriarchal culture, very manly, whatever, blah, 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 whatever, right? Egyptian, whatever it is, Islamic, whatever it is, right? Where we like look at feelings and we discount their worth. Feeling, the ability to have emotions, comes from God himself. It's part of being made in God's image. And Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who is perfect, and who was completely human and always except sin, expressed emotion. He had compassion. He wept. He prayed that where blood was coming out, right? And he was like sweating blood, right? Like he expressed emotion. He played with the little kids, let the little children come, and he's playing with them, right? Like Jesus had emotions. It was expressing them. It was good, man. Like emotions are good. So there's nothing wrong with emotions being like associated with love, right? Actually, I want your whole being, your emotions, your body, your mind, your spirit, everything to be in love, like associated, aligned in harmony. That's part of the broken nature of the world, that we're not in harmony with ourselves. But however, the heart is deceitful. The heart can be deceitful, right? And so sometimes if there's an emotion without the rest of us being in harmony with ourselves, then it's not helpful, right? Because love is not all you need for a healthy relationship. The feeling of love is not all you need for a healthy marriage, right? A feeling is not all you need for a healthy relationship with God. And that's why we have to be a little careful, because sometimes we get so attached to services or speakers who make us feel good, right? And we find our spiritual life is this and this and this, right? But we have to be grounded in the truth, right? So what I'm trying to say is that feelings alone, not good, right? Like the truth, or maybe let me not say the truth, but like just cognitive, like connection and engagement alone is not good. You can find a theologian who has no spiritual life, right? So like we need all of these things to be aligned, and all of these things should be checking each other all the time. They're all checking each other, right? And that's why like you want to cover all those dimensions in any relationship you have. Like fine, you pray so much in your room, but do you ever take communion, right? Or you take communion and you pray, but somebody comes up to you and they say a hurtful word to you and you punch them in the face, you know? Or whatever it is, right? So I hope that answers your question. Like, please, guys, don't discount emotions. Emotions, healthy emotions, are one of the ways that God wants to connect with you. And it's a very beautiful aspect of who you are. I think, look, I'm here, but I don't want people to collapse and stuff. But you
guys are really trying to figure this out. These are asking all the questions. Girls, you're welcome to ask questions.
The girls have got it all figured out, I mean. I gotta stop saying those jokes. But are there any more questions or comments or concerns? All right, so God willing, next week we're gonna talk a bit more about making peace with yourself. And please, like above all things, like pray that God, opens all of our hearts, including mine, to His love and to loving each other and ourselves. And glory be to God forever. Amen.
Can we get one more round of applause for a man who just put his heart on the line and opened up with us? Thank you so much for Makar. That was a very profound and introspective approach of how to receive love, perceive love, and give love. And I want to share a quote that actually you inspired me to share when Warren Buffett said, Mother Teresa said this, she goes, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And like Makar said, and just to echo, is that loving those, and sometimes that's difficult, loving those close to you could be challenging, but it has the power to change the world. So take that into consideration. So on that note, happy Monday. Welcome to all the new beautiful faces that I see. Welcome if you are visiting. For those faces I haven't seen in a long time, hello in the back. It's great to see you again, and for all those who come every week, we love to have you guys. Hello, Hassan. Either way, I just had a few announcements, and just in the spirit of the discussion topic we're talking about, it is a practice of ours in this fellowship that if you are new, introduce yourself, say hi to someone, engage with others. It's very, very important. If you need help with that, I'm here to help. My name is Menardos. Come up to me, I'll introduce you to people. Very important that we have the spirit of love in this fellowship as this community grows. First and foremost, if you're not following us, please follow us on all our social media platforms to keep up with all our services. Our handle is SMSMNYC. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Twitter, and we have a website, St. Mary St. Mark Manhattan.com. This Friday we have an announcement, and in light of the season, we have a Valentine's Day fellowship this Friday. So if you guys are free, if you'd like to bring your dates, your family members, whoever you want to bring, please come. We're going to have a great program. It's this Friday, February 14, brain fart, sorry. February 14 is Valentine's Day. If you guys want to sign up, not sign up, RSVP, it's with Carol. Carol, please raise your hand. We just want to get head count because we're going to order food. We're going to have a great program. So, and it's also suggested $10 per person. So we'll collect that at the door on Friday. Also, every Tuesday the church is open from 3 to 6 p.m. If you'd like to come during work or before, whatever your work schedule is, 3 to 6 p.m. Come take a blessing, quiet time. Also, we are Happy Jonah's Fast. We just began today. Liturgy will be every day. Matins begins at 5 p.m. every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I believe the feast is Thursday by default. So I'm doing math in my head, guys. Please forgive me. It's Monday. So we have that going on. Also, we have a women's ministry that began last month. It went very, very well. We're going to have a women's ministry. There's more information on our social media and website. And I believe the next meeting is February 29th. I believe that's a Saturday. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's it. Is it a Saturday? All right, yes. All right, I'm 1 for 1 for that. So it's on Saturday. There's more information on that. I believe it's Tasoni Phoebe Farag who's giving the talk. She's Abuna's wife. She just published a book, Putting Joy into Practice. I believe she is the speaker. So if you want to sign up for that, ladies, that's particular to you, specific for you, women only. So it's a good ministry that we're starting, and that will be February 29th. Now, we have to start our own ministry, so. But yeah, so, oh, yes, sorry, Dr. Samir. Bible study is this Thursday. Doors open at 7 p.m. So please come at 7 p.m. The program does start a few minutes after. We are on the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8. Am I right? Chapter 8? Chapter 8 for the win. So that's this Thursday at 7 p.m. Doors open. Also, wait, let me see if I'm missing something. Sorry, guys. No. Oh, yes, Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday. Now? 6:30. Okay, so Tuesday, also there's a new service that's beginning. It's just starting and sprouting, and it's spearheaded by our lovely, tech guy, Makar Naguib, all the way from Canada, who came just to do this. I'm just joking, but he is spearheading it. And so that's going to be Tuesday at 6:30. These are specifically for coders, right? Coders? Okay, it's a foreign world to me. It's for people who want to code, learn how to code, and how we could use coding to serve the church and God, right? Okay, for lack of better words. Sorry, guys. I butchered that for you. That is Tuesday. If you want more information, please speak to Mark about it. And are you providing? They're going to provide food. It might be Siami pizza, so get ready for that. Maybe Impossible Burgers. That's good too. No, anyways, but that's it for now. So remember, Tuesday, coders, tech people, come on Tuesday, 6:30, speak to Mark. Thursday is Bible study, Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, 7 p.m. And then Valentine's Day fellowship dinner. Please speak to Carol, RSVP. It's going to be a lot of fun this Friday. And then obviously Saturday there's Vespers. Sunday there's liturgy. Am I missing anything else? No, I'll get back to you next week. But either way, we're going to stand up for prayer.
Through the intercessions of Theotokos, Saint Mary, O Lord, grant us the forgiveness of our sins, We worship you, O Christ, with your good Father and the Holy Spirit, for you have come and saved us. A mercy of peace, a sacrifice of praise. O Lord, hear us when we say thankfully, Our Father who art in heaven. Deliver us from the evil one, through Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory,